I'm excited to now shift our attention from produce and retail to another part of the food waste challenge, which is food waste which occurs in food service and restaurant environments. And specifically, I'm looking forward to telling you about the work that we're doing at Leanpath to prevent that wasted food. And it starts with an understanding that measurement plays a role in fixing this problem, not just in restaurants and food service, but broadly. And that we have a gap right now. The information that we have about food waste is fairly imprecise, and we need to close that gap to be able to understand the root causes and be able to get right down to fixing the problem. So that's the work that we're doing at Leanpath, and I'll dive right in and tell you a little bit more about it. So our mission is to make food waste prevention everyday practice in the world's kitchens. And that may sound simple, but I think it's pretty hard to change behavior, and that's the thing that we're really intent on doing. And the way we view this, the food waste challenge in food service and restaurants will largely be solved by frontline food service workers thinking and acting and behaving differently. And so that's exciting in that the global change makers who might be least expected to change this problem are the folks that actually will change the problem, and we're going to help them do that. This is the problem. Food waste is the elephant in the room in many food service operations. What I mean by this is that we have been wasting food for so long that we no longer see the problem. We tolerate the amount of waste because it's perceived to be the normal way of doing business. And we work around it, and we allow it to persist. And clearly, the first step in this process is to get everyone to wake up and realize that business as usual can't be the future. We have to make changes, and we have to start by recognizing that we have a whole lot of practices and procedures that have been optimized without any attention at all to food waste. In fact, in many cases, we've used food waste to solve other problems. We worry about running out of food, so we make too much. We worry about merchandising attractiveness, so we merchandise perhaps more than we need in buffets. We worry about food safety, and so we practice a view that when in doubt, throw it out. And so all of these things have essentially used waste to solve other problems. And while those other problems are important, clearly waste can't be the answer. We have to do a better job of drilling into this and improving. So that's what I'm excited about doing, is waking up the frontline food service teams around the world to help usher this elephant out of the room. Now, prevention. I led off by saying that I would talk to you today about preventing wasted food in food service and restaurants. That word prevention gets a lot of attention, but in reality, it doesn't get as much action as it deserves. What we find is that much of the food waste equation, at least in the food service and restaurant world, is focused on composting and on food recovery. Both of those are absolutely important and essential things, but they are not the top of the food waste hierarchy. Prevention is the top of the hierarchy. It's the area that delivers the greatest environmental benefits, the greatest economic benefits, and the greatest social benefits. And yet, people tend to be at a loss to know how to do it. So they bow to the topic and they say, of course, prevention is first, but then they quickly move on to things which are tangible, that they can touch, and they perceive that they can change. So we've got to change that. We've got to recognize that we actually do have tools to prevent waste, and it comes down to measurement. That when we measure, we begin to improve things. So often people think of measurement as a data collection activity, and of course it is that, but that's not all it is. The moment we begin to measure, we begin to change culture. We change how people think and how people work. And so we definitely need to recognize that we can prevent waste, and the first step in doing that is to measure. When we measure, a few wonderful things happen. One, we get the opportunity to see a baseline, which tells us where we started and allows us to measure progress over time. Because unlike compost, where I can look and see how much I'm composting, I can't look anywhere to see how much food I'm preventing. It's the absence of something, not the presence. So the only artifact that we have to be able to know that we're achieving our objectives is to measure. Secondly, we can't understand root causes and we can't develop solutions if we can't actually get right in and see in granular detail what we're wasting. Specific items, specific contexts for loss, times of day, sources. All of these things are critical to our ability to solve the problem. And we can't engage people, those frontline food service workers that I talked about, in this process without measurement, because they're very busy. They're focused on many things in terms of preparing a meal and bringing a great culinary experience to people. But if we can actually get them to measure, we draw their attention just a little bit in order to focus culture and change behavior. So measurement's critical. I think the second thought here is that you're trying to change behavior in the course of doing this. And if you try to do that just by lecturing to people and telling them that they need to do something differently, it doesn't work. And trust me, I've tried. I've spent a lot of time in kitchens talking to people about why this is so important. And what I've learned is that this quote from Buckminster Fuller is really true. If you want to teach people a new way of thinking, don't bother trying to teach them. Instead, give them a tool. And through the use of that tool, it will lead to new ways of thinking. So I think this is a key takeaway, that we have to actually put our hands around something to see the progress. And so that's what we do at Leanpath, is we provide tools to measure waste. And when I started this company 14 years ago, food waste was not a topic that people were paying attention to. And it was not something that immediately made sense to people why we would need to do this. But of course, now today we recognize the measurement gap. And what's standing between us and the measurement gap is actually the question of technology. We need to make measurement easy, because if we make it easy, then we can make it everyday practice in the world's kitchens. If it's difficult, we can't do it. So that becomes the core hurdle that we have to hop over. And that's the work that we do at Leanpath. These are some examples of some of the ways that we measure wasted food with scales and cameras, touchscreen input devices. We, of course, need to learn from this data. So yes, just the measurement process in and of itself will focus behavior and raise awareness, and that's important. But we also have to learn and understand what's occurring and then be able to drill down and make those changes. So the world that we're in now, which I'm so excited about, is a world where instead of us being blind to food waste, we wake up every day and go into work, and we have a report in our inbox if we're a chef that shows everything we wasted the day before, why it happened, where it happened, and we can actually go about fixing that problem. Even better, we may get an alert sent to us in real time the moment somebody throws something away, and be able to walk into a kitchen and speak to someone and say, hey, why did that happen? What could we do to improve that? Because, of course, there are immediate teaching opportunities every day. So we just took a little snapshot from last year and about 1,200 kitchens that we were looking at, and I wanted to share a little bit of it with you. 51% overproduction. So when you hear about this problem, I think it's really important to recognize that this problem is largely about making too much food, not matching supply and demand properly. And so that's got to be a point of impact that is on everyone's radar. It's getting that overproduction back to the proper size. You'll also see that that's followed by trimmings and spoilage. Trimmings tend to be less actionable, not without the ability to influence them. We're not without the ability to influence them, but it's less than overproduction. You'll also see that what gets wasted most is vegetables. And that is sad, because the item that is the most nutritious in many cases is the item we waste the most. So that just gives you a little bit of a snapshot of some of the data that we see coming through our systems every day. So what can we do looking forward? Well, I think there's a responsibility for innovators and our industry to make measurement as easy and affordable as possible. And that's something that we're working on every day at Leanpath, is finding ways to make it a little bit easier, a little bit more affordable, a little bit more feasible for a broader section of the universe of food service professionals to be able to participate in this. We need to close loops with our menus and our production planning, and we need to really use waste data to inform how we plan future menus, which historically just hasn't happened very often. We need to reinforce the right behaviors, the right food prep behaviors, knife skills, and compliance in production with the plans that we've made. And we need to engage consumers at a post-consumer level in this process, because they don't get a pass. We need to look at rules and standard operating procedures we've created that have created structural waste. Things like the last customer must see what the first customer saw when they came into an operation. We can change that. We need to look at which concepts produce less waste, like, for example, looking at buffets versus pre-plated service. And we need to connect all this back to SDG 12.3 and the global effort to reduce food waste. By doing all this, we've been able to save about 9 million kilos of food waste in the last few years, and we're super proud of that. And I hope what you'll take away from this today is that we'd like you to join us in this journey. This is work that we all have to be doing. We need to be raising awareness around this topic, and it's definitely a solvable problem. Thank you.